So, celebrity TV cook Delia Smith and former Beatle Paul McCartney were both made Companions of Honour in 2018. What rank does that hold in the British establishment hierarchy? Well, I have some basic knowledge of the hierarchical pyramid. The CBE, Commander of the Order of the British Empire, is the highest-ranking Order of the British Empire Award, excluding a knighthood or damehood, followed by OBE, Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, and then MBE, Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. Now that's just the basics. I had to Google what position the Companion of Honour title holds in the British establishment, and I'm English, and I live on this sceptred isle. Apparently, the Order of the Companions of Honour is considered a high honour, equivalent to being a member of the Order of Merit, but without conferring a knighthood. Google goes on to say that the Order of the Companions of Honour is one of the highest honours in the UK, ranking above knighthoods and damehoods. But unlike knighthoods, becoming a Companion of Honour does not confer a title like Sir or Dame. However, recipients are entitled to use the post-nominal letters CH after their name. Complicated, isn't it? And that's just it, isn't it? All these titles and letters after names don't mean a thing to the average person, or should I say British citizen. Actually, we Brits are subjects and not citizens. Perhaps I'd best say I'm a commoner. Doff my cap and show I know my place in the pecking order. The majority of British people are, of course, not on any level of the hierarchical pyramid, and when it comes to the Freemasons, who make up part of the pyramid, we are referred to as the profane. The establishment structures become even more complicated when various other orders are added to the network, such as the Order of the Thistle. Or perhaps I should give it its full title of the Most Ancient and Most Noble Order of the Thistle, which is an order of chivalry associated with Scotland. The order consists of the sovereign and 16 knights and ladies, as well as certain extra knights, members of the British royal family and foreign monarchs. The sovereign alone grants membership to the order. They are not advised by the government, as occurs with most other orders. The order's primary emblem is the thistle, the national flower of Scotland. Its motto is Latin, "For no one provokes me with impunity." Coincidentally, the motto can be seen on Ringo's Scottish military issue Tam O'Shanter hat he wore in the movie Help. Come to think of it, there's quite a bit of symbolism going on associated with Help. Here's a photo from the Daily Mirror taken in 1965, announcing that the Beatles were about to depart to the Bahamas to start the filming of Help, their second feature-length movie. The pose George Harrison, director Dick Lester and producer Walter Shenson are making looks very, well, hit-and-hand Masonic, or are they all simultaneously scratching the niche? Whatever its meaning or cause, it seems quite persistent. Here's George again posing in an earlier photo shoot, with Ringo looking rather ill with tonsillitis before he was taken into hospital, and Jimmy Nichols stood in as drummer on 8 dates of the Beatles' 1964 World Tour. By the way, that's Liverpool's old Masonic Lodge top right, which was situated in Walton, John Lennon's neck of the woods. The Brotherhood has a newer one these days. As a Freemason, George Harrison would have been in good company. The Duke of Kent completed his second degree on the 30th of January 1964, and his third degree on the 5th of June that same year, and served as Master of the Lodge in 1965. Meanwhile, the younger royals seem to have that same itch. To be fair, some say the spare heir has a nervous tendency, which results in him feeling the need to adjust his attire. Even Brian Jones, the Rolling Stones founder and initial leader, seen here adopting the Napoleon stance with the 18-year-old Donovan, appears to have suffered from that same itch. You wouldn't think that being a Freemason and a pop star would be a good fit. But if the Brotherhood was good enough for Mozart and George Gershwin, then being on the square must have its advantages. I mean, who knows what connections and deals can be made when attending the lodge. The Chelsea Lodge, number 3098 in London, is said to be special and has drawn some big names in rock music. Rick Wakeman, former keyboard wizard with prog rock band Yes, became a past master here. Yes bass player Chris Squire also joined the lodge. Oh well, I'm sure it's all perfectly innocent. Besides, the Freemasons aren't a secret society. They do a lot for charity, I'm told, and any man in the UK over the age of 18 can join, regardless of race or religion, provided they believe in a supreme being, whoever or whatever that is. Joining the CBE, OBE, MBE club, and especially to become a Companion of Honour, involves considerably more vetting and individual effort. The recipient, as seen here, is awarded their Order of the British Empire Medal for their contributions and services to their given field, typically services to music, and often their chosen charity. Here's a selection of music industry faces and famous albums they created, which you probably know. Some were among my favourites. There's too many to cover in this video, so let's take a look at 6 of the iconic music industry names from the 60s and early 70s, who were lucky men and made the grade, and were nominated, validated by the Relevant Committee, and subsequently honoured. Queen last with the Beatles, read the headline. She was just like a mum to us, says Paul, who later told us that Her Majesty was a pretty nice girl. As most people know, the first British pop stars to receive honours were the Beatles, who were awarded MBEs, Member of the Order of the British Empire, in 1965 for their contributions to entertainment. I thought it was also for their contribution to the failing British economy and putting up with Harold Wilson's government's swinging taxation rates, as George Harrison protested in the song Taxman. Well, George was living in the material world back then. But despite Harold Wilson's publicity stunt, support for the Mop Tops receiving a medal wasn't universally accepted. According to the UK Parliament website, quote, in June 1965, Queen Elizabeth II appointed each of the Beatles a member of the British Empire, following their nomination by Prime Minister Harold Wilson. Normally presented to military veterans or civil servants, the controversial decision to honour the Beatles led to some former MBE recipients returning their awards. Although the return of the awards was not uncommon, this was the highest level of protest in many years. Apparently, the Beatles had some support in Parliament for receiving the MBE due to the worldwide success of their achievement, particularly in America. However, their being awarded an MBE was only supported by a small minority of members, with the majority not agreeing with the principle that a popular music group should be granted such an honour. In November 1969, John Lennon famously returned his MBE, and in a typed letter addressed to the Queen on notepaper headed Bag Productions, Lennon and Yoko's new company, he wrote, Your Majesty, I am returning my MBE as a protest against Britain's involvement in the Nigeria Biafra thing, against our support of America in Vietnam, and against cold turkey slipping down the charts. With love, John Lennon of Bag. I doubt, despite the royal family's historical connection to the opioids trade, that the Queen would have known what going cold turkey was, although I'm guessing Special Branch would have been aware of Lennon's heroin addiction. Sir Paul was knighted in 1997, and Sir Ringo had to wait until 2018. Is there anyone else who gets sick of seeing Ringo flash the peace sign? Starr said he lost full years to alcohol and drugs before attending addiction treatment in 1988. By the look of it, he still thinks it's 1967 and the summer of love. Yeah, man, peace. So that's the good boys of pop. What about the 60s' second biggest British band, the Bad Boys, the Rolling Stones? Michael Philip Jagger was knighted in June 2002 for services to music, having enjoyed worldwide success with the Rolling Stones. Jagger was born on the 26th of July 1943 in Dartford, Kent, and is seen here with his 92-year-old father, who was a teacher, and his daughters Caris and Elizabeth. The Queen was rumoured to be utterly disappointed with the selection of Jagger for a knighthood, which was new Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair's idea as part of his Cool Britannia promotional campaign. The late Queen apparently didn't like Jagger's so-called anti-establishment views, which most now regard as part of his rock rebel act. It's more likely that she didn't like his close association and rumoured affair with her sister, Princess Margaret. Can smooching with a royal princess be considered anti-establishment? There was, of course, the infamous Redlands drug bust, which Keith Richards touched upon in his criticism of Jagger's acceptance of being honoured when he said, quote, "I thought it was ludicrous to take one of those gongs from the establishment when they did their very best to throw us in jail and kill us at one time," unquote. But I thought rather it was Keith who ran the greater risk of killing himself at one point with his self-inflicted heroin addiction. Let's take a look at another one of my favourite and beloved 60s bands, The Who. The Who's frontman Roger Daltrey was honoured with a CBE, Commander of the Order of the British Empire, in February 2005 for his services to music and charitable causes, particularly his work with the Teenage Cancer Trust. CBE is 2 rungs up the honours ladder from the MBEs that the Beatles received. He was later knighted in the King's Birthday Honours in June 2025 for his contributions to charity and music. Coincidentally, The Who's bassist John Entwistle joined the same Masonic lodge as the Yes Prog rock band members Rick Wakeman and Chris Squire. Pete Townsend was quoted in 2002 as saying, quote, "It wasn't until the day of his funeral that I discovered that he spent most of his life as a Freemason," unquote. I thought that such circumstances were impossible, given the number of years the two had spent playing in The Who, until I attended a friend's funeral and witnessed a senior local Mason leading the funeral service of my departed friend. Similar to the Stones, where the lead singer got the royal nod and the band's guitarist didn't, it's unlikely that Roger Daltrey's bandmate Pete Townsend will receive an honour, despite Townsend being the main writer of The Who's music and the founder of the sexual abuse charity Double O that The Who set up in the 1970s. Townsend was one of 3,744 people arrested in the UK as part of Operation Ore, a nationwide police crackdown on internet perverts, and being cautioned was put on the sex offenders register for 5 years. The Who guitarist says he was unfairly judged by society after trying to expose child abuse, and insisted at the time that he had simply been conducting research when he paid £7 with his credit card in 1999 to access a child porn website. After a 4-month investigation, London's Metropolitan Police said that Townsend was not in possession of any downloaded child abuse images, but had accessed a site containing such images in 1999. The title character in Townsend's rock opera Tommy, a deaf, dumb and blind pinball wizard, is sexually abused by an uncle, and Townsend said he believed that he had been sexually abused as a young boy while in the care of his mentally ill grandmother. I've often wondered whether the Acid Queen episode in Townsend's rock opera was a reference to LSD and the drug's use in trauma-based mind control, favourite of the MK project. Roger Daltrey had a painful encounter one day before the Masters of Rock Music concert, where a sort of stage version of Quadrophenia was to be performed on behalf of the Prince's Trust in London's Hyde Park in June 1996, the Prince being Prince Charles at the time, who subsequently became King Charles III. Heading out the show, Gary Glitter was chosen to join in on the Punk and the Godfather number. The performance was 1 year before the glitter rock icon was arrested for possessing child pornography. The glam rocker was swinging around a £15 microphone stand over his head during rehearsal when he slammed it right into Roger Daltrey's left eye. Glitter's arrest came about when he took his laptop in for repair. He was jailed for 4 months in the UK in 1999 after admitting possessing a collection of 4,000 hardcore photographs of children being abused. Talking about the Prince and his trust reminds me. During a recording from an interview in 2009, Prince Charlie's former friend and trusted advisor Jimmy Savile defended fellow paedophile Gary Glitter by saying, "Now Gary, all he did was take his computer into PC World to get it repaired. They went into the hard drive, saw all these dodgy pictures and told the police, and the police then, 'Oh, we've got a famous person. Oh my goodness, yeah, we'll have them.' But Gary has not sold them, has not tried to sell them, not tried to show them in public or anything like that. It were for his own gratification. But they didn't do anything wrong, but they are then demonised. And of course, if you ever said to a copper, 'What's Gary Glitter done wrong?' Well, nothing." It was the King's late mummy who gave Savile his awards thanks to being nominated by Conservative Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. They made a fine pair of NSPCC helpers, didn't they? Sir Raymond Douglas Davis, CBE, was the lead vocalist, rhythm guitarist and primary songwriter for the rock band The Kinks, which he led with his younger brother Dave, providing lead guitar and backing vocals. Both were the only consistent members of The Kinks during the band's existence. Davis was appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire, CBE, for services to music in the 2004 New Year's Honours. Remember, CBE is a higher rank than the MBE the members of the Beatles received, which is the lowest on the British establishment's honours pyramid. Davis was later knighted in the 2017 New Year Honours for service to the arts. I have to say I have a bit of a soft spot for Ray. Waterloo Sunset is probably one of the best pop singles of the 1960s in my opinion. Ray's working class roots came through his songs. Apparently Ray attended William Grimshaw Secondary Modern School in Muswell Hill, along with Rod, the Tory voting Maud Stewart, who was once a hero of mine but turned out to be a disappointment, especially his recommendation that we should all give Nigel Farage and his Reform Party a chance. No chance, Rod. Maggie may, but not me. Ray's brother Dave is also a Freemason, and it's been reported that his journey in Freemasonry has changed his life and music. This spiritual path has influenced his music, adding themes of unity and brotherhood, according to one Masonic website. Like many boomers, my very first proper guitar hero was Eric Clapton, and Cream, Britain's first supergroup, became my all-time favourite 60s band when it came to individual and combined musicianship. I picked up rumours that Cream's drummer Ginger Baker was a registered heroin addict around the time I bought Disraeli Gears. He began using the drug in the 1960s while a jazz drummer in the London clubs. It's been said there are two types of jazz musician: those who use heroin and those who don't. Jack Bruce, the Power Trio's bass player, became addicted to heroin in 1971, and it stalked him throughout the 70s and much of the 1980s, until 1986 when he got control over his addiction, aided by specialist treatment and the support he received from his second wife, Margaret. Cream broke up in 1968, and Clapton was an alcoholic and addicted to heroin by the time he began playing solo in 1970. In his 2012 autobiography, Who Am I?, Pete Townshend reflects on the irony of his efforts to get his old friend Eric Clapton back on the straight and narrow. There's something ironic in a drunk showing up to help a junkie. It was shortly before Christmas 1972, and the Who's guitarist was growing increasingly concerned about the spiralling heroin habit of Clapton and his then-girlfriend, Alice Ormsby Gore. Alice Magdalene Sarah Ormsby Gore was a British aristocrat who was part of the fashion and arts counterculture in London during the 1960s. For about 5 years she was the romantic partner of guitarist Eric Clapton. The couple were briefly subjected to media speculation about a possible marriage. She died of a heroin overdose in 1995. When Alice Ormsby Gore began dating Eric Clapton in the late 1960s when she was 16 years old, Clapton was around 23 or 24 years old at the time, and their relationship lasted for about 5 years. I should hasten to add that the age of consent in England is 16, and anyone aged 16 or over, regardless of gender or sexuality, can legally consent to sex. From the 1st of November 1968 to 1973, Alice Ormsby Gore's relationship with Eric Clapton was marked by drugs, alcohol, and abuse. Alice Ormsby Gore is quoted as saying, "I was deliberately running around that city, trying to score some heroin for Eric. And I remember thinking how stupid it was for me, even then. I did that for him and for myself for 3 years. It was probably childish to be overprotective, but I thought it helped him not to have to face the full horror himself of scoring his own heroin supply." I'm assuming she means London in her reference to that city. To be honest, I'm still shocked today and disappointed to read that one of my old heroes let a teenager run round a major city to score heroin for him. In 1973, Clapton broke the engagement and ended their relationship for good after recovering from his heroin addiction with the help of Ormsby Gore's family. Clapton maintained he was not in love with Ormsby Gore, but she was deeply in love with him. In 1994, the Queen made Eric Clapton an Officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, in her New Year's Honours List for contributions to British life. 4 years later, in 1998, Clapton, a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, founded the Crossroads Centre, a medical facility for those recovering from substance abuse on the Isle of Antigua, which is one of the Leeward Islands in the Caribbean, and a long way away from Clapton's native England, and too far away, I suspect, to be of any benefit to his less well-off countrymen who may be recovering from substance abuse. A nice place to visit, I should imagine, if you've got the money. On the 3rd of November 2004, in a ceremony at Buckingham Palace, Eric was made a Commander of the Order of the British Empire, CBE. It was conferred by the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, having been announced in the 2004 New Year's Honours List by the late Queen Elizabeth II on the 31st of December 2003. Moving on to Led Zeppelin's founder, member and lead guitarist Jimmy Page. In 2005, Jimmy Page was appointed Officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for his charitable work, specifically his involvement with Task Brazil and Action for Brazil's Children's Trust. He was recognised for his efforts in supporting children in Brazil, including setting up a safe house for street children. The award was presented by Elizabeth II. Similar to Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page is another English guitarist whose charitable work takes place far away from England's shores. And similar to The Who's Roger Daltrey, Led Zepp's Axeman received an OBE and was appointed an Officer of the British Empire for his charitable work involving children. Although Action for Brazil's Children's Trust is a UK-based charity, the charity supports vulnerable children and young people in Brazil and focuses on providing education support and inspiration to help them overcome poverty, neglect, and abuse. That's interesting. In June of 1972, the members of Led Zeppelin were in Los Angeles for their 1972 North American tour. While there, Laurie Matrix, otherwise known as Baby Groupie, met 28-year-old guitarist Jimmy Page for the first time at the Hyatt Hotel, where the band was staying. According to Matrix's 2015 interview with Thrillist, Page approached Matrix and introduced himself by the hotel's pool. Later that evening, the band's manager, Peter Grant, spotted Matrix and her groupie friends at the Rainbow Bar and Grill. He insisted she come with him. A limo then drove her back to the Hyatt to meet with Page in his room. In a 2009 interview, Matrix claimed she lost her virginity to Page during that encounter. This was the beginning of her sexual, romantic relationship with Page, despite being 14 years old. California's age of sexual consent was 18 at the time, and still is. Because of this, according to Rolling Stone magazine, Page feared charges of statutory rape, and went to great lengths to hide his association with Matrix. Page's sexual relationship with the underage Matrix lasted more than 2 years, ending in 1975 when she was 16. Of course, being a groupie, Jimmy was only one of Laurie's encounters, for want of a better word. Others included David Bowie, who incidentally turned down his award from the British establishment, which probably did him more good than harm, and good old Sir Mick Jagger. I'm not sure what the late Queen of England would have made of all of that, but she saw fit to award Jimmy Page for his efforts involving vulnerable children. I'm pretty certain that I wouldn't have been permitted to work with vulnerable teenagers and adults if I'd had a criminal record of drug busts, a history of heroin and alcohol addiction, and sex with underage girls, let alone be given an award by Britain's royalty. The phrase contribution to or services to crops up when an honour is awarded. Services to music and services to music and charity are typically phrases that appear in the press when it comes to why yesterday's rock star rebels have been honoured and received their medal from royalty. In amongst the pageantry of the ceremony, there's an underlying historical common factor which unites the unlikely union of the British royal family and yesterday's rock star rebels. The common factor being the poppy, or to be precise, opium, and ultimately its modern-day derivative, heroin. John Lennon and Keith Richards were famously addicted. All the members of Cream were addicts at one point or another, among numerous other rock rebel addicts. Where's the connection, you may ask? Let's take a look at things from a more historical perspective. The Tavistock Institute's founding sponsors were the Russell family, who became important in England after the rise of the Tudor dynasty. The Russell family associations with the East India Company covered 6 generations, from the first to the 6 Dukes of Bedford. The company dominated the opium and slave trade, and conquered both the Chinese and the Indians through a reign of terror and opium addiction, which was used as a weapon to weaken them. And so it was, after victory in the Opium Wars, when the right to import opium into China was won, that King Charles' ancestor, Queen Victoria, became the first drug-dealing monarch. To summarise, there are common threads running through the historical backgrounds of those honoured in this presentation and Britain's royalty. Those threads involve addiction to alcohol and opioids and opiates, such as heroin, underage sex, links to predatory sex abusers and Freemasonry. Quite a heady mix, and not the kind of thing you'd expect to find among the commanders, officers and members of the esteemed order of the British Empire. The British establishment is willing to overlook past misdemeanours it would normally punish others for, and honour yesterday's counterculture rebels for their services. But it's all par for the course when it comes to the British establishment and its hierarchical honours pyramid. I'll leave you to decide if they are counterculture rock rebels or loyal servants. If you liked this video and others on the channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Many thanks for watching.